Welcome to Live Sense8. I'm Sheila Applegate.
I'm Zac Hansen.
And I'm Martin Earhart.
In this podcast, we dive into the concepts of consciousness and other interesting trivia in the Netflix Original Series Sense8. We're doing an episode-by-episode exploration of how we can live a Sense8 life. We'll also be adding some special interviews along the way.
This episode of the Live Sense8 podcast is brought to you by our sponsors, Denise Natishan, Teresa Hallinan, and Divine Phoenix Books. Books with a purpose for a positive change.
All right, let's look at what's going on in the world of Sense8 right now. The most exciting thing happening here today is that we have Martin Earhart in the studio with us. Hello, Martin.
Hello.
What's up?
You're here.
We are here.
Live.
We are in person with each other. He's experiencing snow for the first time, which is very exciting. So Martin's going to be recording another episode with us, but we needed to bring him in and say hello to you all here today and participate in our What's Going On segment. So what is going on aside from Martin being here? We have the official Netflix Sense8 Twitter account has shown up and started to work with the fans. That's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, we're very excited with the fans. We want to know what is going on.
Exactly. What's going on?
Just right.
So they seem like they're interested in working with us, and they set up a email account for us to write to them, right?
Yeah, that's globalcluster@netflix.com.
Which is awesome. So people can, if you guys be nice, because Sense8s are nice, right? But let's send them some mail and tell them how important the show is to us and give them ideas about how to support it and that we're here.
Yeah, and how it's so important for us.
Right. And you've been in dialogue with them a bit, right?
Yeah, we are going to move forward to that.
Awesome.
Maybe we can support each other.
Perfect. That's what it's all about. All right. So let's see. What else is going on? There's some students at the Information and Communication Department of Bordeaux-Montaigne University in France, and they're studying TV show fans. And of course, they wanted to check on Sense8 because we are some of the most original TV show fans around there, creative and cohesive. So they have a survey out for Sense8 fans, and we are linking that survey or putting the survey link up at our Twitter account at live_sense8. And you can also find it in this episode's write-up on livesense8.com. There is also a screening of the special that's coming up, and the word on the streets is it's awesome, but we knew it would be, right? But that's good. That means that some of the first people to get exposed to it in the media like it, and that's wonderful. And of course, coming up very soon is the global meditation on March 20th. Join us live at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you miss it live, the replay link will be available for you to listen to for as long as you want. Let's send some Sense8 love out into the world. And let's see, let's finish this up with hearing a little bit of an update from you, Martin, on the documentary. Are you still taking submissions, and how do people send to you?
Yeah, we're seeing accepting videos and their stories to come into our mail, which is sense8withoutborders@gmail.com.
Awesome. And they can make either a video clip or a write-up about, we really were focusing on how Sense8 has affected their life, right? So
how was the impact on their life?
The impact of Sense8 on your life. So get out your cell phones or your keyboard and give Martin a little insight into a window into the impact that Sense8 has had on your life. I know it's affected mine a little bit. What about you, Zac?
Yeah, just a little bit.
We are just experienced as Sense8.
Exactly. We have coming together here. We would not be sitting here with Martin without Sense8, which is pretty amazing because we really are having an awesome time together.
It is. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, let's get on with the show.
Let's talk about episode 6 in season 1, Demon. It was directed by Lana and Lily Wachowski. It was created and written by the skis company. Man, I keep doing that. It's my little personal joke. Yikes! The unpronounceable productions. Hooray! I made it through. We're gonna keep that. And it was that's Lana and Lily Wachowski and Michael J. Straczynski. We have our team, our super team of Will and Riley. They try out a phone call together, like a real phone call, text messages and talking and stuff.
Yeah, before I had asked why they hadn't tried out a phone yet. So now they finally do. And now we know why. There's reverb.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of when my friend Daryl from England, when, we became friends before email, but when email started, it was still too slow for us. So we just didn't use it.
Yep, didn't need it. Snail mail, email, the new email, snail mail. So then Riley, she totally gets almost executed by a drug dealer in this one. Gets suffocated. And Will helps her out.
Yeah, and we see something following up your kind of premonition from a few weeks ago, too, with Riley in this episode.
Yep, this premonition was...
Premonition, you did see it before.
Right. This premonition was brought to us in episode 3, where Leto is shooting a scene, and he stops, and he's talking to the director, and he's like, hey, my character should know this. I know this. I want to reshoot the scene. I know that I'm going to be betrayed, and here it is.
Yeah, so when we were dialoguing about that, you were saying, is this, because Riley's walking up the stairs into Shug's and Bambi's place.
Yep.
And you were saying, do they betray her? And we couldn't remember. And we try not to, I've watched it a few times, but I try to stick to just the episode for you guys. So we didn't look ahead. And now we see it.
Yep, it was there. She is going to betray you, is what Leto said as he was walking up the stairs as Riley. And then Riley is shot back into the director's scene, and the director says, the only way you can go is to walk through this door.
Yes.
And so Riley then
you have no place else to go.
Right.
And she really didn't.
Right. And so then Riley walks through that door, and then she's betrayed. Now, it doesn't right now. See, I don't remember a lot about the show. So right now we don't know who betrayed her other than the couple.
We don't ever go back to them
okay.
unless in the finale so anyway, special.
So
yeah.
Riley was betrayed, and she almost got choked out forever.
Right.
And then we have Sun publicly takes responsibility for her father's and brother's grave mistakes.
Yeah, and then there's the court scene, and she's not allowed bail because the money is still missing. So they're standing in the courtroom watching her go to jail, knowing that they have the money. I mean, I'm sure he spent a lot because we see him extravagantly spending, but still.
Right. Well, it sounded like it was 30 billion of whatever their currency is. I know that's not 30 billion US dollars, but that sounds like a lot of money that's just gone.
It seems like.
Right. So she could disappear with a new identity and maybe move to a different planet with that much money if she wanted to. So they didn't let her have bail.
Right. But we also know that her brother and father just stand there and say, okay, and they keep the money.
Yep, that's part of the deal.
Yep. Well, yeah.
Then we have Nomi and Amanita. They go back to their old apartment, and it is trashed. And Nomi finds out that they even took her journals, so she feels very personally violated.
Yeah, and that's a turning point for Nomi, where we go from the victim to the action mode. She kicks in, like, that's it. I think Amanita even says, oh, this shit just got real. Because now Nomi, we see that other side of Nomi that's like, okay, I'm done wallowing in this experience. Let's get our action going.
Right.
And she calls her people.
You can only push a man or a woman so far.
Right.
Before they need to do something to take care of themselves.
Yeah. And, you know, anger, a lot of us try to avoid anger, but anger is a good motivator for action. And
it is.
A long time ago, my friend Daphne Rose Kingma was talking about that. Like, I'm so angry that, like, how do you use your anger to put passion into motion? So
that's awesome.
We see Nomi doing that.
That's a tricky thing for me personally too, is how to be angry productively. How can I rage out on these things and do it in a positive, productive manner?
Right. And I think
without
a lot of
destroying myself in the process or those around me.
Yeah. We kind of got into that last week. It's in the special section for the Patreon, but with Maximilian, we kind of talked about with politics and stuff and anger and how do we bring love into all of that and still take action.
Yeah. Now we have Lido, Hernando, and Daniela at a wrestling match.
Which is, you know, loud and strange. But my favorite part, well, no, we're going to go over this scene because it's so important. But one of the things I want to say before we dive deeper in is Hernando says something about he loves all art and the wrestling being like a dance. And to me, I was like, my God, that line, so tiny, mixed in with what we're going to talk about, is so deep. But that in itself is so deep too, because I mean, at least here in the US, or my exposure to that production style wrestling is that it's kind of considered kitsch. It's not, you know, there's a snobbiness that wouldn't be a real art. But Hernandez can just show up and see the brilliance in anything.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
It's props to him, because I couldn't do that. And then we have Kala waking up after the wedding feint, and she finds a Wolfgang in her bedroom.
Well, first she wakes up to the whole family, and that's a little freaky. And you know, like, that wedding had to have been the night before, right? And I think, I think so. And she's like, what, she got like carried over it? That's just a bizarre thing. But the freakiness of waking up to her whole family watching her all night long.
Yeah, that's weird.
Loving. Weird.
I'd have to be out if somebody was going to stand over me all night, like multiple people, out. Like out. Instead of not wake. I don't know how she did it. I'm such a light sleeper. But
anyway, so that happened. And then, she goes to her closet to get dressed and go down and see Raja. But she pulls out Wolfgang's boxers instead, I think.
And then says gross and drops them on the floor. And then we have some Wolfgang conversation with Kala and swimming.
Yeah, he doesn't do too much of a swimming. He's not in this a whole lot.
He's not. He's just
this swimming, though. Pay attention to Wolfgang in water. That is significant.
Mm-hmm. He's a deep character.
Conduit. He's a huge conduit. He's deep.
Deep like the ocean, this Wolfgang is.
Or the pool.
Yeah, you know.
The deep end.
And then we have the first Sense8 energetic orgy.
Yeah, and I think, of course, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And, you know, writing up what we were going to talk about today, I know it's my feeling about the word orgy, but I'm like, that just reduces it to call it. I mean, I've heard a lot of people call it an orgy, and it is what it is. That is the correct name for it, but I think it's gotten so
right. I think that's what we need to talk about today too, right? Is it are orgies dirty and disgusting, or is our human connotations of what we think about that dirty and disgusting? Do you see what I'm saying? Because we're gonna flip these things around today, and that's probably part of that. I'm not saying they are not.
Right. No, I know. And that's what I was thinking when I was calling. I mean, I know people have been calling that, and that's true. And we're also going to talk about whether that would be in physical, like reaching that state, or here, not everybody's there physically too. So we don't really have a word for that. Right.
Not that to my knowledge.
If that's the word, then we have orgies all the time.
Maybe in some like sacred tantric book I'm not familiar with or something, there might be a word for it.
Yeah. So
ancient language.
Anyway, we're going to dive obviously into that a little bit as we go on. So where to start?
I think I'm going crazy.
You think you're going crazy?
No. I think I'm gaining sanity, actually.
But a lot of the characters, that is one of the themes that kind of seems to run through this is, and that's happened before, we've had this conversation, but we see the characters now this is here, right? In the beginning, when Will said that to Jonas, it was really new. But now time has passed, and this is still happening to everyone. And they're all still, so it's here to stay. And now we have a deeper exploration from the characters of, is this real? What's real? Am I going crazy? Where are the boundaries? Do I have any privacy? Do I have any right to control this? Like, all this stuff is coming up, and it's so important because this is Live Sense8, right? This is about what happens in real life. And this is a common theme when I help people to open up to their deeper senses and consciousness. And it's what religions and society has invoked fear around, right? Because we have to move. We've been told this stuff is crazy, so we have to move through that in order to reach our natural state. And we see it in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways is that conversation we talked about with Will and Riley. They do call each other because they're saying, are we going crazy? Right? And that's their way of getting evidence. So that's something like we do need to look for evidence when evidence is what we want it. And sometimes people will say, oh, I can never, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. But, when we assume there's evidence, we can let it happen or we can practice things. So they had
just being open to the possibility of evidence. Like that would be assuming that there's something going to be showing up in my experience that's going to reinforce these concepts that I am thinking about or experiencing.
Yeah, it's that allowing it to happen.
I think Jonas said, just allow it to happen.
Allow it to happen. It's me, Jonas, with hardly a little dark side. Yeah, I'm thinking about early on when I started doing readings and someone came to my house and she said she wanted a reading, but no matter what I said, she's like, you could have made that up. You could have figured this out. You could have. And the guide said, tell her to leave. Tell her there's nothing you can say. That's going to change her mind right now because she wanted evidence, but she didn't really want evidence, right? So she left, and 5 years later, she told me, there's nothing else everything you said came true, and there's nothing else you could have done that day that would have got my attention other than telling me to leave, or that would have made me believe. So it's that attitude, right? Like these guys do have a little bit of a willingness to believe, but they're needing reassurance right now. And maybe that's the different word between evidence is reassurance.
Yeah, reinsurance it's important.
I think so.
Very important reinsurance. Yeah. And
I think when we allow it to happen, we get the reassurance all the time. So here, this happened in a pretty cool way. He gives her the phone number and she calls, and then they get
his partner,
Diago, to answer the phone, and he hears her. And that's a funny scene.
Yeah, it is.
It's sweet.
It is sweet. I can just say I would have been geeking out hardcore. I'm not saying they did a bad job. Maybe they've personally never had these experiences. I don't know. Maybe they have. But I would have been geeking out like crazy. Like, oh my God, this worked.
Okay, I can actually give you a real life thing about you might not. It's weird, but here's his news story. You haven't, I mean, I've told you the story where the person called me out of the blue, but I had a dead person call me. And that's pretty freaky. And you'd think I would be all excited and telling everyone and like this might be the first time I'm saying this public, and it happened years and years ago. So we all know that my twin flame died years ago. And within that same first year, he came into my dream. And we've talked about how the short glimpses and dreams, because I would remember he was dead. So there's one dream one morning, he's saying, I got to get more, he used to have those payphone, like the phone you put on more minutes. I got to get more minutes from my phone. Back in the day, we put more minutes on our phone, right? He's like, I got to get more minutes from my phone. In the dream, common thing with him when he was alive, because that's how his phone was working. And interestingly, might get long, but I think it's interesting, so we're going to go with it. So when he was killed, he was hit by a car. He had his phone on him. He had no minutes because I knew, because I was paying his phone bill and he was out of minutes and we were changing something. So, and when he went that night, he took his phone and I said, why are you taking your phone when you have no minutes? He called his dad and said goodbye that night before he was killed from the phone that had no minutes on it. Then he was killed and by a car, and the entire area was searched. His phone was never found. So that's the background. So then not too long later, I get this dream and he says, I need minutes from my phone. And then I'm like remembering he said, I'm like, oh, right, but you're dead. He's like, Sheila. And that's how he used to say it. Sheila. I said, I'm getting minutes from my phone. Like, okay. So that's the dream. I wake up in the morning and it's only a few minutes later. I wake up and I get up. I'm the only one home. Or no, the kids were upstairs. And I walked by my landline phone and it rang and it was like 6:30 in the morning. And it had an unknown caller on it. I don't answer my phone at 6:30 in the morning. Like, I just don't, like, I didn't do that. Like, that's my work line. But I picked it up and it's someone with his accent. He has a very specific native accent. And he's like, what you doing? And I'm like, and there's rattling. So every time I said, who is it? The phone would rattle. Who is this? The phone would rattle. Well, it sounded just like him, but I'm not processing that it would be him at this point. And then I'm feeling a presence in the room to the point where I'm like freaking out. It's early in the morning. I feel like somebody's in my house and this guy's voice on the other side that does sound like my twin is talking to me. And I hung up on him. I had someone call me from beyond and I hung up on him. And even after hanging up on him, I didn't realize it was him until my kids woke up. Little at that age. They were little. And I told them the story, which why would a mom tell them the story when there was still the creepy feeling, like uneasy feeling? But I tell him the story and my son looks at me. He's like, Mom, it was Tom. I'm like, oh yeah. So I know that's a long tangent, but I'm telling you, when you get that way, you're in like this surreal way.
For sure. I just know how I react to these kind of things.
And you would be all excited.
I get super giddy and laugh a lot and like hysterical.
See, I went inward. I just went in with like, and then I didn't tell anyone but my kids for a while. Then I told my close friends. And then, like I said, I may have told it in a couple stories when I was teaching, but I'm not like...
Well, another thing too is, you're talking about somebody who's deceased and these two people are
Well, that's
alive.
true. That is true. So that would be an easier thing to say. Yeah. Different. Yeah. And Diego did know what was going on. So they could have, but I'm just saying sometimes it's like you're in that zone and it feels so natural and so weird at the same time. That's what I'm really saying. And in that zone, yeah, I think I would react a little more. And you got evidence but yeah. I agree. After that long tangent, I agree.
It's all relative. It's all relative. And the more we like right now, if those things if I had those experiences, I might be like, meh, it's every day. It's like It's like synchronicity. Synchronicity happens all the time in my life. Like it's like an everyday occurrence. So although I am grateful for it, I'm so used to having everything just synchronistically work that it's my norm.
Right. And I think that's a piece too, because think about it. Like they are a little bit into this. They're still questioning if they're crazy, but like Will's already been bouncing in Jonas's car. He got, he was found by the person the feds were looking for. He spoke a different language. I mean, he's getting a little used to this shit,
right.
All right, let's go on. Who else did we not cover?
So Sun, she's walking into the office in the morning.
Yeah.
And Nomi shows up.
Right.
And Sun's like, I'm just going to not look at you and keep walking.
Yeah. So now this is a good example of Sun's the one that like teaches them control, going back to when she talks to Capheus. And she's like, I choose to believe you're a hallucination if you're okay with that. Something to that effect. You're right. She just keeps her wits about her. She keeps control over this. Back when the chicken lands on her desk, she just throws it off. Nomi's there. She's like, I got shit to do. I'm just going to look away and you're going to disappear. But I think that it helped Nomi too, to realize she could control it. Cause when Nomi, gets bounced in a way, like Nomi's in the office, Sun, they're looking at each other. Sun looks away. Nomi may have been able to pick up on the fact that there's some control about it. But then, later on, Sun kind of comes around and she reaches out to Riley. And when she reaches out to Riley, she takes it a little bit further and she feels safe, I guess, to explore it.
Yeah, it's almost like the more they interact with each other, the more they're learning from each other on how this works.
And interestingly, when she starts to feel safe, she is in jail already, right? And that's when she goes to Riley. So, she probably felt like she couldn't let any interference in until she had made the decision and was. So interestingly enough, and then in the scene, Riley says to her, "You're safer there," and that is when Sun starts opening to things.
Yeah.
So, and we see it. Where else do we see it in here?
The blocking or the consciously choosing?
Well, we're looking at what are some of the, I'm going crazy, learning to, I think this is all about them learning to control the gifts, right? Oh, privacy is another theme. Like if we're going to be in the are there boundaries in here? And can we control it? And Nomi has some really good lines about this too that I kind of held on to.
Yeah. You want to go over those now or later?
Yeah, no, it's good.
All right.
Hey guys, should we do this with you now or should we do this later? Let's do it now, Zac. Let's just do a whole podcast right now.
Excellent.
All right. So Nomi is she's kind of trying to figure this all out. And she says that she's wondering, can I stop it? And then she says, is it like ADD that I can control with medication? Or is it more like Alzheimer's that is progressive, where my sense of meanness slowly and inevitably denigrates? So that wasn't an exact quote. That's mixed between a quote and a summary. But I've had a lot of, we know my mom and dad. My dad has Alzheimer's. My mom has dementia. So I'm watching that with them. But even with my clients, I've worked with a lot of people who came for readings based on, about their loved one who had Alzheimer's and how to deal with that. And so I was able to connect with a lot of people who have Alzheimer's. And I think they really nailed that. Like Alzheimer's, from what I've seen, is a letting go of that ego self, that identity of meanness, which to me is another example of an ego in a sense. And why we need an awesome ego instead of to just get rid of our ego, right? Like a lot of the the themes today are get rid of your ego, but that's getting rid of your meanness, and nobody wants to do that.
Right, because I'm a me and I'm also a we.
Right. It's both. So Alzheimer's, definitely, I see people there, when people that we see experiencing Alzheimer's, they're experiencing timelessness. They're floating beyond time. Their attachment to their physical world identity and personality in this lifetime is dissolving. And that actually is helping some people cross over. It's interesting, lately I've had I actually went to a doctor, and both the nurse and the doctor had experienced someone with Alzheimer's. And when I mentioned in my history that my dad had it, they both said something to the effect of, that's a really difficult disease. And it is, when you think of it just physically, but when you realize they're moving into oneness, it's really quite beautiful, because it is at the end of their life. I mean, it does shorten the life, I guess, if we think of it as a disease. But there's something quite beautiful about that. And ADD is on the other end of the spectrum. We've got young kids coming in. And I always say ADD is my superpower, right? It's that ability to multitask that's so important. And it doesn't need to be controlled by medication. It needs to be learned. And both of these, so she's giving us like, is it something I can control? Both of these, her mind of it, it's something outside of me still. She's still thinking of it as like a disease. But I think we can embrace it, whether it's ADD, that we're learning to put our attention on multiple things. So they're actually quite similar, because ADD is being able to put your attention on a lot of things at one time. And basically in Consciously Awesome, with my conscious meditation technique, that's exactly what I'm teaching people to do, to stretch your brain so that you can actually consciously be aware of multiple realms at the same time. And ADD is, we're watching people come in with that ability now, because we're evolving as humans, whether we know it or not. So I don't know. I mean, Nomi is still trying to figure out how to figure out those boundaries, how to control it, if there is boundaries, because that's where we're talking. Like, you talked a lot about privacy, right? And there aren't boundaries. The meanness goes away.
Well, what I think they're trying to portray a little bit through this show is unity consciousness.
Yes.
And unity consciousness, a lot of people, this is just my perspective, a lot of people can be afraid of unity consciousness, because they're like, oh, where am I going to go?
Exactly. And that's like oneness. Like in oneness, we hear a lot in my circles is like the same thing to me.
Right. So for me, in my personal experience of unity consciousness, the best picture I could paint is, well, I'll do one with Sense8 first. They're moving in and out of each other's consciousness. So they do become one, but they are also a me.
They're also a me.
They're also a me.
I like
right?
that.
So they go back and forth at will. So when they join in with each other, they don't lose themselves. They are expanding their idea of self. Their self becomes these 7 other selves, right? So their talents, their skills, their languages, their belief system, their experiences, all of that is still there, and they get to tap into the rest. So my personal experience of unity consciousness, and what the higher understanding of that would be, is that you don't disappear. You have free will still in unity consciousness, and you can move in and out of it as you will.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the way I teach that is like horizontal oneness, right? That's, we know kind of, like we talk a lot about oneness in our union with the divine, whatever our language is, and being connected to all that is an energy field. But when horizontal oneness comes in, that's like, all right, you're over there and you're me, but you have your own personality, your own free will. And do we agree or disagree? Am I okay with this? And for me, the twin flame vibration is that closest aspect of it. And that's what the twin flame vibration is about, the twin flame relationship. And I know I'm using different language than Sense8, but it's like the closest. So in Sense8, I would say there's a chance, if we were going to compare that, let's say Wolfgang and Kala, maybe Riley and Will are maybe twin flames within.
Do you want to elaborate on what a twin flame is?
Yeah, that's like a whole nother.
It is.
That might have to be like a bonus class where I talk about that. But in the meantime,
just a little tiny bit. Of what that.
Yeah.
What you mean by twin flame?
So for me, that would be that closest Sense8 experience in the human form. So for me, it's like that last piece of oneness that we expanded from before our own personal identity. So when you come across that person in the physical world, it is whether you are thinking this way or not. And I work with a lot of people that weren't thinking this way. I wasn't thinking this way when it happened. And you're like, what the heck is this? Really, that's not what you say. Something similar. I'm being sweet in my language. But like, that's what that vibration is. So when I talk about my beloved or my twin flame, it's not about a form of relationship on earth. It's about this soul connection that can be in any form as far as what type of relationship you have. But you can't escape it, and it freaks people out. And I think that's a little bit what's going on with them too. Like, they're in your head. You're just, you know them, and they know you. So you can't hide from your shadows at all. Like, you can't, you certainly couldn't lie, but you can't even lie to yourself because they're going to see it.
Yeah. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that here soon in the dialogue.
Yeah. So, that's what I mean. So it's kind of like,
I'm a pictures kind of guy. So if I was in a soul factory, so to speak,
yes.
and there's this soul that's poured into this mold. It's like the same, if there's this liquid that's poured into a mold, it's the mold that I was poured into has the same liquid as the next person was poured into, so to speak. So it's like of the same liquid in the same mold. They're in the same batch, basically. Right. And so they have this closeness or entanglement that somebody from a different batch or a liquid from a different batch wouldn't have. I'm just, trying to paint a picture for myself.
That works.
All right.
But you could look the mold could be different.
I'm trying to make it really simple.
The mold could look very different, but the substance in it,
same.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I was getting at with it.
So, but the point that I was going to make with this is that is like, when you come upon that in the physical world, you're faced with it. You can't escape it. Even if you like separate and say, we're never going to talk again, it's activated, and you have to deal with that. How do I stay me and we at the same time? And I feel like that's what some of these people are doing and dealing with. Like, to me, and I don't think it has to be one other person, but I think we notice it in that way in the earth. That's how I've seen it. But if we take it to that group, I mean, I think so. Sometimes people think, oh, this is my twin flame, until the person shows up and like, whoa, this is more. But there's a group of people around, and that's what these guys are experiencing. So in their connectedness, it's like, how do I have boundaries? And then, yeah, go ahead.
Right, yeah.
Thinking of it more simplistically, even too, let's take this whole deep soul connectedness theory away. People come to me for readings or something. They're looking at me and they're actually freaked out by the idea that a dead person can watch them all the time. And they're like, well, do they see me having sex? Do they see me, like getting dressed? Like, right. Are they just peeping on me all the time?
Yes, they are.
It's like, it's really not like that. They're not as fascinated with the human body as we tend to be. I mean, they may be in awe of it, but they probably see us more in the colors and the lights and the soul or whatever. They're in timelessness. I don't know how much of that they're going to spend on watching us get dressed. But that's kind of where Kala is when she's trying to get dressed. She's feeling invaded in that same way that sometimes we think about, like, well, wait a second, if I let dead people be near me, does that mean they're going to hear me and watch everything? It's like, well, Actually, they can. Anyway, so you might as well chat with them.
And you're pretty highly sought after, right? With helping people through twin flame relationships in the work that you do.
Well, that was a bounce.
It was. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I love you, Zac. You're such a sweetheart. Yeah, that has been...
there's not too many, to my exposure, there's not too many twin flame expert or master teachers out there. And it's a service that you offer. So I just thought people might want to know about that.
Yeah, that's true. I spent a lot of my career, I haven't been talking about it, focusing on it that much in the last few years, just because I've been focusing on something else. But throughout my career, having lived the experience, having learned it, seen it, I attracted a lot of clients that work or that are dealing with that because I could understand it. There's a lot of things out there that I don't believe. The people, they're not terribly bad maybe, but I'm like, I don't know if they're actually know what a twin flame is, or there's just a lot of misconceptions about it. So I have been kind of strong about trying to get the truth out about it. Yeah. And I do have an affinity towards that for sure. Cause I know.
You know it so well.
I know it on Earth, and I know what happens when you have to change the form. And so I know it in spirit and on Earth. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Now I'll get us back on track. So this is just totally off topic.
I thought you were going to get us back on track.
Well, I am off topic. It's still part of Sense8. So I just wanted to bring this up. I thought it was interesting that when Sun and Riley are talking during the sunset and they're sharing some marijuana, that
hash.
Hash. Sorry. It's concentrated stuff. Anyway, that she brings up there's small people in Iceland, and that I just thought I would just want to bring that up real quick. There's a lot of indigenous people who believe in small magical people. And she brought that up in the show.
Doesn't
I just thought
everybody believe in there's a lot of children that believe in small magical people too.
That made it into the show even. I just thought it was cool.
Yeah. It is. And there's different names, different traditions, but I think it should be looked at in our mind if we want to contemplate why all around the world there are these stories about the little people. Yeah.
Specifically in the indigenous culture too, right? Compared to like modern day culture. Not to say that modern day people don't believe, because some of us do, but indigenous people have certain stories and belief systems that are common amongst them all, like the creation story and little people and such. So anyway, I just thought it was so subtle, but it was something of note, I thought.
It is of note.
All right. Let's talk about demons, shall we?
Well, yeah, the show title is Demon. I know we said it at the beginning, but let's remember that we know now that the show title directs us to very pivotal parts in the episode. So,
yes,
Demon.
This would be it.
You have already ruined my life.
I didn't ruin anything. You didn't want to marry that guy.
That is not for you to say.
Maybe not, but you wanted me to say it.
You don't know what I want.
Don't I?
No. Okay, I don't know what is going on here. If I'm totally losing my mind. Or if one of the gods or goddesses is angry with me and has sent a demon. A dangerous pervert demon who never seems to have any clothes on.
Germans are not so uptight about nudity.
This is not about nudity, okay? This is about decency. It is about privacy.
If you were so concerned with privacy and decency, why did you look?
I did not.
Yes, you did. You looked then and you're looking now.
I'm not.
Listen. I don't know what's happening to us either, but I do know that from the moment I first saw you, I wanted you. Somehow I'd feel that you want me too.
Oh my God. You are a demon.
He is a demon. It was funny. I just looked at it again, and he's a demon from Germany. Like, that doesn't even like cross her mind. Like, oh, so God sent a demon
God's in the opposite.
from Germany, obviously, because they don't mind being naked. Like, they didn't even.
And she did look.
Yeah, we all looked.
Which is an interesting thing, because when she's talking to Raja, after she wakes up, after this, she talks to her fiance Raja, and he's saying he liked that she fainted because it makes their wedding special, and he could tell that their children that she took one look at him and fainted, or their father and fainted, and it's like, ooh, who's the father gonna be?
Who's your daddy?
All right. But really, we're going on a deeper angle with this demon sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm. Isn't
demon
that
sexuality?
Demon sexuality. All right, is that a website? Probably. So, this is very tricksy, this one. I think as a culture, not all of us, but there's a lot of cultures out there and stuff that really put too much shame on the body and what we naturally are. And we associate demons with sexuality, and that perverts and prevents and denies us of our real nature. And I think that causes a lot of problems for society and people with guilt and shame surrounded by sexuality.
There's a reason why religions and society demonize sexuality.
What's that reason, Sheila?
Because sexual energy is I say most primitive, meaning the most earthly reflection of creative energy and creation energy in its purest form. So when we are open to our own sexual energy, aligned with our bodies, open to our spirits in the creative zone, we're all powerful and we can create a world that we want. And you can't suppress a person who can create the world that they want. So if we cut it right at the baseline, that the most primitive thing that you can't control, right? That's the springboard for creative creativity. Everybody has it. Like the race can't continue. Humanity can't continue. The species can't continue without propagating through sex. Well, now we probably can, but anyway. So by cutting it at the most primitive or when I say primitive, I mean like the densest frequency vibration, not bad, not good. It's the whole spectrum. That's a miracle. But yeah, so we're cutting it there. And to think the confusion of her, because she's thinking she's following her religion, right? But if God's punish you for your basic instinct, if God's punish you for love or
what a
desire,
terrible existence.
Yeah. I mean, you're always in fear, so you can't, contrast to Jonas, who says, listen to your own intuition, no matter what people tell you, when you've got this dichotomy of, death is a punishment, but living is hard and you get rewarded when you die, but don't try not to die, and communicate with your gods, but don't trust them, because if you can't control even your most natural instinct, you'll be punished by him. I mean, it's just this talk about, am I going crazy? They're coming out of crazy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. And this is setting up, we've already talked about that by the end, or it's not even in the end, it's in the middle, but this is our first sexual orgy that we're going to go into, creation orgy. I don't know what we're going to call it, but I think it's also calling out the viewers too. Like, get ready. We're going to challenge you too for what do you believe? How are you related to sexual energy? Because they do challenge people here.
Yeah, they challenge a lot of people.
I guess they challenged people right from the beginning by showing couples that most people wouldn't necessarily be exposed to. And we're looking at sex in a different way. Right from the beginning, they've been dealing with the visualization of sex combined with love in such a beautiful way, and showing it when it's not.
Right. They've done both. And Kala's, she's having some problems. And this is what, she wants Wolfgang a lot.
And she's never probably felt that way before. I don't think.
Right. And now that he's there saying, hey, I'm here and I want you too. And she still denies him because there's this inner struggle within her.
Well, also he's in Germany.
Right. But, energetically speaking, you never know what could happen.
Well, and it does. But yeah,
right.
She doesn't deny him for long. But yeah, so she's trying to do what's right. But this is the other thing people do. This is the way we're trained to do it. You find the right person that fits all these exterior. You create the marriage, you create the form that is going to provide for you and look really good. And then suddenly the desire and the love and the sex becomes godly or godly, good. But really when we want divine relationships, it starts in those frequencies. Like when I work with people about finding their soulmate or being in divine relationships, I'm working with them. I'm teaching them to connect first through spirit and then let the person come to them. Or if you're in relationship, like with a twin flame, if they're right in front of you, you still have to go spirit down. So you see the two opposites right here in this scene.
I'm a big proponent of we don't give our bodies enough honoring and acceptance. And here is another I'll get into this more, but she twists herself in knots. Mm-hmm. And if you can't trust your own body, how can you trust your own mind?
Right.
So at a young age, we're taught, some of us, I'll say that, are taught to feel guilt or shame over what our bodies naturally are attracted to or want to do when it comes to sexuality and other things. And this isn't even including, so this is for straight people. And it's also for gay people and trans. Like it gets even worse the farther you get out from straight.
As far as the rules,
as far as like how exactly. So
yeah.
it gets exponential. But we all can have that experience. But if you can't trust your own body, what it's telling you to do in your own heart, like so, your body, when you are attracted to somebody, and they're attracted to you, I'm sure we've all had those experiences. But there's just like, and maybe you can't do anything or whatever, you can't fulfill that. Then you start to shut down. Something's wrong inside of your body that you can't listen to anymore, whether that's your heart or your mind or your body. Instead of them all working together, we kind of shut one of them off at a time. Right. And so this isn't, not only are we as young people learning to lose our imagination as we're schooled, now we're taught that our bodies are wrong. So we have a lot of correcting to do within ourselves as we grow up and realize, oh man, the world around me is dumb. Why don't I have anybody to teach me this stuff? Because, some people don't have somebody wise around them and they have to figure it out the hard way and go through those hardships. And then, their life could be halfway over before they open up to their own sexual nature and creativity. Like this all goes together.
Yeah,
like
they'll suppress your creativity.
Right.
If you're suppressing that, that's kind of creating the gray world around us, right? The passion, the creativity, the ability to create the life you want, all of that, it gets stepped on.
So many perversions happen from this, I think, and perversions in sexuality, but perversions of self-esteem as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's pretty powerful. And I think they're also, direct, because this is the first time the demon is talked about, but we go a little further and we're going to springboard into that. But I think they're, kind of addressing the viewer, like, get ready and look at yourself. What do you feel? Like we do know we're about to challenge you in a scene that's coming up. So let's get you thinking about that now, the brilliance of this creation energy that they got going on here. So right after that conversation, they flash to I call it the demon wrestling match with Leto Daniela, Hernando.
Well, there definitely could be a demon in that scene, and it's not a wrestler.
At the end.
Yeah.
At the end. But the wrestler who we figured out is the Boganator.
Yeah, was that right? I could not figure that out.
We think so.
That. Yeah.
That's his name. I think they announce him as the Boganator or something. But we didn't do a clip for this because we had to work really hard to hear with the loudness of the wrestling that how profound. Another one of those times where these huge gems are right here and you could just overlook them.
Right. Well, there's the loudness of the crowd.
Right.
So they're creating that atmosphere. It's really hard to hear Hernando, at least on our television set, because it's so
that's
loud.
True. Everyone.
And he has an accent.
For us.
Right. But he's also
egocentrism, but yeah.
Right. So it's challenging when I hear, like, even Lito in the car, and sometimes I'm like, what did he say? Right. Like I have to rewind a lot. So it was hard, but it's a beautiful scene. And it slipped by me the first time I watched this, that's for sure.
Do you want to read it?
Sure. This is Hernando. Did you say the Boganator? He is a symbol of the devil in our lives. For some people, he represents the government, a caste system, any form of suppression. For most of us, he is the fear we are afraid to face. This is the dance. This is a dance that is also a fight, as they're watching wrestling.
Yeah, and this is flashing back and forth. These lines are coming in between wrestling chaos.
The struggle that takes place in the ring is a reflection of the struggle that takes place in our minds and in our hearts. At some point, we all encounter our own Boganator. It was as if we were afraid of that thing that stops us from being that thing we know we can become. If we do not defeat him, we will never know peace.
And I think that this is so powerful to move from the scene with Kala and Wolfgang where we're talking about exterior demons sort of, and God's bringing us demons and challenging us, and it's outside of us, to Hernando going right in and saying, that's just a dance for what's inside of you. And
right.
You always have to look at what's inside of you. And I don't know. I just saw yesterday, I saw A Wrinkle in Time, amazing movie. But they do that. They talk about the darkness there is really a representation of what's inside of you. And you have to go deep into it and find self-love to dissolve it. I think that's almost exactly the message that Hernando sums up in 6 lines.
Yep. Very thematic.
Yeah. So we've got the demon of the show as Wolfgang is a demon because he's sexy.
and he's German, right? I mean, obviously, that's where all the gods send demons from, Germany. I'm just kidding.
And then now we've got Hernando giving us more of an understanding of it from our internal representation. And then the other theme that goes through
Yeah, I had one more thing about that scene, actually. Now that we're talking about it again, the wrestling scene I really think I kind of see this in some of the clips, but I really feel like Daniela is falling in love for both of them. And vice versa. Like they really have a 3-way relationship.
Oh yeah, they do right from the start.
So
I think.
yeah, and that's what they showed in the clips of the very end of the last show is when they were talking about companionship, and they show all 3 of those 3 people on the couch, and they're just enjoying themselves, and there is something going on that's transcending the physical. And so I think here too, Daniela's through Lito's eyes. Mm-hmm. is starting to appreciate Hernando even more, in my opinion. So I was just this subtle thing that I caught.
Yeah, I think it's a good representation that not all relationships have to be between just 2 people. Like that's a societal presentation of what relationships should be. certainly a parent is capable of loving 2 children or 7. I don't know how you do 7. I'm sure
Very
you do.
carefully, right? Lots of vodka, maybe? I don't know. Just kidding.
But yeah, I think it's a beautiful, there's just so many examples of love beyond our traditional forms in here. And truly, love is definitely growing between all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something I noticed.
Yeah. So from there, the other thing that we've noticed, it kind of takes it. So we went from the sexual demon outside of you, or desire, gluttony. What are those ultimate sins? I don't know. But
Lust
is in there. Yeah. You go from that to the internal expression of a demon inside of us and needing to face it, to then, and this is woven throughout it, but if we look at the layers of the title of the show, we've got humanizing the bad guys going on here. And the only way we can have war and all of these, I don't know, so much of the misconduct or the ugh in
the yuck, the bleh.
In our society has to do with demonizing. Like, you have to demonize another person. That's even what so many of the movies and shows, right? Bad guy, good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Good guy overcomes the bad guy. Like, can we get done with that now? And they're showing that here because they kind of start to look at the layers of the bad guys.
Because we're all human beings, just doing the best we can. Yeah.
They're just catching up to our analysis from Jonas. But that's because we got to go ahead and see what happens with Jonas. Always got to give him a shout out. All right. So the first place we see that sort of layers is when Kala goes to talk to Raja. And this is a kind of layered scene in itself, because she's looking at her own demons, because she's like thinking she's thinking, well, if that happened to me, I'd just back out of this. Maybe even wishing that had been the other way around, so she had a reason to back out.
Right, she totally projected that she hates him, and he didn't pay attention to that, neither did she.
Mm-hmm. But even before that, he's giving honor to her father's food, which is interesting because in the past, his dad has not done that, not respected him in the same way that then Kala says her grandmother didn't. So she says it's a recipe from my grandmother, and Raja's all poetic and like how we pass things down through recipes and DNA, which is true. Very cool line. And then Kala's like, well, she was really mean to my dad. She never honored him. She told him that she was a bad cook. So the story that's been passed down is her dad's pain, right? About his mom not treating him well. And Raja says he has compassion for the grandmother and says how hard it would be for her, for a woman in that time, to have any respect and to get, to have her son be getting all this attention for cooking in a way that she did all the time would have been hurtful. And so, it kind of shifts Kala's perception right there in 2 ways, I think. It shifts her perception of the story that's been passed down about her grandmother. And now she's seeing the compassion for her grandmother and relating to her in a new level in an instant. But it's also shifting her perception of him because she's not resonating with him. She's been told he's the bad guy in the community. And she was, I think, starting to move him. She just says that in the next line. I would hate you. I would think this, And she's kind of starting to move him in the bad guy category and step away from this. And then he's like so honoring of women and so understanding and deep and compassionate. And she can't hold him in that space either. So it kind of breaks down.
How can I be mad at you for being awesome right now?
Okay. And
why are you mad at me? I ruined your $30 billion wedding.
From Son's drug, right?
Exactly.
So I don't know. Kyle is definitely having her boundaries stripped, not from the cluster in this way, but the little boxes that kept her feeling safe. Good guy, bad guy, devil, goddess, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I like what Raja brings up about our parents. You know, they're really doing the best they could have done.
Yeah.
And it's our job to forgive them.
Which is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I mean, the parent-child theme is a huge part of this. And like we were talking with Maximilian, the generations growing and moving past the storyline of the parents behind them, you know, is really powerful to our evolution.
It is very powerful. And what Max said, I totally agree with about the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's something that we haven't seen in generationalism, where the older generation always bitches and complains about the new generation, and the new generation always rebels like it's as old as the hero's journey. But what we need to do is take the wisdom of the old with the new ideas of the young people who have to solve all these problems that the generations before us didn't solve, and we have new problems to deal with in this age that have never been dealt with before or even thought of. And we need to take their wisdom along with our new ideas on how to solve, like, together in balance and harmony, not versus each other. Us versus them does not work out in any situation whatsoever. Like, for the good of humanity or a family or a couple.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then a really wise woman in my life once said, people do the best they can. If they could do better, they would do better. And when they can do better, they will do better. And I thought that was epic. Such a good quote. I was very jealous that I didn't come up with this myself, actually. It's one of those ones. I was like, oh man, I could have said that. That's so awesome. So, but that was Sheila who said that. And that's talking about the belief systems that we have dictate our model of the world and our behavior. And, you know, we only know what we know, and the generations before us might not have been privy to the things that we are. And it's upon us to, you know, take that torch and teach our children and those around us a healthier way of life.
Yeah. So thank you for the shout out.
You're welcome.
And, but to keep going with that idea that your people are doing the best that they can, and they'll do better than they will.
When they can, they will.
When they can, they will. We look at Silas, and we get that layer too, right? Because he's represented as the bad guy. You know, I mean, he's the big drug lord. We start out seeing him where we think Capheus is going to be killed. Then he sets this up where he gives him coconuts in a bag and beats him up to see if he can get it there. But he's given the drugs, but he's manipulating him.
It's very yucky.
You know, so we kind of put him in a category. That's a bad guy.
Right.
And then we get this scene in this one where he's in his beautiful, calm home estate. Kind of extreme. But is there with his daughter, who just adores him and is making a sandcastle, and he's just a person. And he says to Capheus, my daughter does not see me as someone to fear. She sees me only as Papa. She is the most important thing in the world for me. Everything I do for her. Without her in my life, there is no meaning. And then he follows that with a threat.
Right. So go ahead.
If something happens to her, neither will yours. So that's the layers right in one sentence, right? Like, he's his good dad.
I am a good dad, but I'll cut some bitches. Maybe put some bullets in their head. I don't know. But that's the thing too, is because you know, it's like Wolfgang and Max. They inherited being gangsters, I think. They don't really show that in the film so much, but they're a family of mobsters, and they're just a product of their environment, so to speak. And I think we all are, and to a degree, and this person is too, and he just happened to become a badass drug lord to build that really nice house and have his family and stuff. So,
and then we find out what he's going to have Capheus do, and it really is for his daughter. And so the correlation between, I know you're going to want to save your mom and you'll do anything for her, and I'm going to use that because I'd do anything for my daughter. She has leukemia and I need the stem cell treatment. And because of what I do, I can't trust anyone else with her, because now he's protecting her, and yet he's the reason. Well, there's two reasons: leukemia, which is just nature, and then his behavior are what puts a threat on her. And then he has to protect her more. So it's just this.
It's a bad loop. So parents will do bad things, air quotes, bad things. They'll do what they need to do to take care of the family, and that's the best thing they can do. And in my life, my mom she was a very sick woman. She had multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and she was paranoid schizophrenic, among other things. And I was a kid. I grew up with this stuff. I didn't know any better. And when I examined my life after she was gone, I noticed that she did the best she could for her children. And the best she could do was marry an abusive man and put all of her kids in an abusive home. But her kids had a home. They had food. She did what she could do given her situation. So there's three of us that had to live through the wake of that experience, but we're all pretty good now. But it's not like, there was a lot of trauma that was caused, but she was only doing the best she could do. And I couldn't look at that and say that in earnest and really have love and compassion for her until much later in my life.
Yeah. And I think that happens so many times, even sometimes parents being harsh to their kids. And I've heard people straight out say it. If they come from difficult lives, life is hard. So I'm going to tease them at home. I'm going to toughen them up so that they're ready for the world. So even some of that, like how can a parent or someone do that to a child, actually comes from a space of the best I can. I think the world is scary. It would be better for you to learn this from me so that when you go out there, you're safe. Yep. It's pretty layered.
It is. Yeah.
And they really show that with these scenes here. And when we go even further, when Silas's daughter, now I want to call him Van Damme. I know it kind of starts to bounce, but when Capheus and they're watching Van Damme and they're talking about it, and he's like, I really like him. He's probably thinking in his head, let's teach her about good guys, because she, and make her turn into a good guy. I don't know what he's thinking, but he's showing her this, and she's like, I like him, and he smiles. She's like, I like Jean-Claude, and he smiles like, oh, I got her to like the good guy, and then she says, my dad is like Jean-Claude, and Capheus is like, what? And he says Jean-Claude wants to do the same thing my dad wants to do. And he's like, what do you mean? Make the
world a better place, right?
She says that bad guys or bad people are trying to come for us and he protects us. He has to protect me from the bad guys or something like that. So who is the bad guy? The bad guy, that's like in our world right now. Who's the terrorist? It's the person that we can decide demonize. For some reason, we can make them outside of ourselves and give them a title. I think the bad guy is now replaced with the terrorist, and someone we can make a demon outside of ourselves gets that label. Because if you start watching events that happen, the same type of event can happen, and depending on who the perpetrator is, it will be called a terrorist or not.
Right. Well, we have to demonize people to attack them, because when we start demonizing and we start labeling people as something outside of ourselves, then it's okay. It's okay to go attack them, but then it's also okay not to look within.
Yeah, so when we start to see that the demons aren't outside of ourselves and that the good guys and the bad guys are more layered and humanized than we like to think, then this gets real and war doesn't have power anymore. And that's very frightening to the man.
It is.
Which could be, I'm going to create a conspiracy theory here. That could be why Sense8 is not getting all its seasons.
I can see a website going up. Send it to us, whoever's making this conspiracy theory website about Sense8. I want to see it.
But it is, we've seen this across the board and we're seeing it in the show, but we see it in our lives. And this is about Live Sense8. We have to realize that the story of the bad guy and dehumanizing the bad guy is what keeps the violence going. And we're being shown every time we're shown a story where those lines are blurred and layered and we see both sides of someone, it starts to reprogram us and help us to evolve to a different state of consciousness.
To expand our identity of self to include another.
Yes. To be a me and also a we.
All right, so now we have Leto getting an interview.
Yeah, and so this is kind of transcending the this is interesting because this scene, we have him having an interview at the same time that Sun is, and he's linked up to Sun, and Sun is getting her intake interview type of thing. And so they're both in similar situations, and Sun is being treated very poorly. Like the person intaking her sees her as the bad guy, and then we see him as a bad guy because he's treating our beautiful Sun this way, and he doesn't see it. And then we kind of keep that theme going, and then Leto kind of breaks it in the moment. He's mixed up and kind of holding himself.
Well, we talked about this before the podcast, and what I liked that you saw out of this scene is Leto was feeling just as violated by the interviewer's questions as Sun was with the questions that was processing her from the person that was processing her into the prison.
Yeah, because it bounces, and so he's perceiving himself as Sun when she gets asked if she's ever been tested for HIV. So his deepest secret, right? His demon is that keeping his sexual orientation hidden because he thinks that it would interrupt his career. And so he maybe does some not so nice things to protect that secret. And then we've got the being interviewed, that fear of that probably happened every time he was interviewed.
Exposed.
Yeah, the fear of being exposed. And then, she's being asked about the HIV. He feels like he is. He responds to that. And then that mirror, like the guy's going to look at her. Vagina. I'm trying to think, is there a word you're supposed to use on the podcast?
Vagina. That's the word.
Well, he's going to look at her and obviously Leto's dress, it's not going to be the same impact, but he's feeling equally as vulnerable there. But Leto probably feels that every time he's interviewing. If you think about going into an interview like that with a secret that you're constantly trying to protect, and his fear's been rising. So that's interesting. And I also, I have to say, I have a little compassion for him because he's like in public. He's keeping a public persona, and the gifts of connection are putting him over the top. And I've been there because sometimes the energetic connection makes it hard to function or to be presentable. If you kind of go too far, it's like a little bit like, you may even look drunk or something when you're not. And so that trying to keep the persona and all together as a professional when your gifts are kind of heightened, the energy is really high and you're kind of groggy, you're out there.
Well, sometimes those experiences kind of demand more of your attention than you can give the people in your physical space. And so that creates the
that's
where am I at? What am I doing? And everybody else is kind of awkward around you too,
right?
Because you're not paying attention.
Yeah, because it really is. Like I said, we teach people to, ADD, where you consciously pay attention to more than one thing at a time. But if the thing that isn't in front of your face, if the physical is demanding more attention, which in that case it was, it's difficult to keep focused in what's happening in the physical in a very gentle way. I remember driving with my kids and they clearly had asked me a question. And, but a lot of times when I'm driving, I kind of go up into my higher consciousness and I turn to them and I knew, and I got there to the question, to the answer, but there's this delay and it may only be a few seconds, but I remember saying to them, you have to understand that if my attention is up in those higher planes, I'm hearing you. But once you ask a question, I have to say to myself, oh, they're speaking, they're asking you a question, get back down into the present time, bring your attention down. And then I hear the question and then I can answer it. But there's this whole delay going on when you have to share your attention.
You need to upgrade your internet speed.
Yeah. Well, I have. They were younger when I think I have. But sometimes, it gets a little goofy. Like we had a friend after one of our energy workshops, fractal illumination. That's a good example. She was all feeling the energy from fractal illumination, and we went out to dinner.
And we had a good dinner. It was fun.
We had a good dinner. And I put $100 bill down because I was going to cover the whole dinner. And she looked at it and she goes, is that a $200 bill? And for those of you not in the States, we don't have $200 bills. And she was so out of it that but she realized she was, and she was like, I know there's no $200 bills.
Almost. It took a few,
and then
there was a pause, and it's like, oh, yeah, there's no $200 bill.
But then she kept saying, a few minutes later, she's like, I know. And she's coming more and more back. I know there's no $200.
We weren't jazzing. We understood. We were just as high. It was fun. It was
So I can understand how he's feeling in that. We've been there. Right. We've been there, Lido. We feel it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's all that, but on top of that, this whole concept of privacy. Do I have any of it?
Right, exactly.
Right? And they're both being violated, one physically and the other one just with questions. And that's what I like. And we'll get into this over the podcast more, but they're really exploring how many different ways we can be violated as human beings.
Right. That's true. And then they're learning, can I control my, can I focus here? And can I get this next question? Can I pull away enough? Can I get through this? Yeah. It's a pretty, this is so good. I love this show. So Lido then gets asked, he's been trying to protect himself as this,
steamy romance. I belong on a romance novel cover kind of guy.
Right. And
a playboy.
Right. And he thinks his career is based on women having crushes on him, basically, on that reputation. And so the question is, you have all those steamy love scenes. What makes a good lover? Yeah. What's your secret to being a good lover? Right. So I think, right. And then, of course, he's thinking of Hernando, and he says, you have to be selfless. The pleasure of your lover must become your own, but at the same time, you must also remain selfish, because wanting someone so much that it feels the same as the need to eat, to breathe, this is where desire becomes love. I guess.
Did you get that? All right, great.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
He's like all proud. He's like, right. I made it back from that.
Such an awkward
prison
moment. Yeah, he was feeling awkward. He did a good job.
He redeemed himself. He redeemed himself through that one. He really faced his demon. He was afraid of those questions, and he was able to draw on his truth.
Right.
To answer that. Yeah.
Whenever they draw on their truth in this show, they have some really good answers.
Imagine that.
Weird.
Right. Huh. Maybe there's a message there.
Maybe there is.
But I was thinking when I just read that a little bit too, I I like that selfless and selfish. I'm a strong advocate that part of being selfless is being selfish. Like, we really do a lot for ourselves. And if we aren't showing up with that, well, what he's really talking about is the mean. He actually is saying exactly the same thing. Can I have the meanness and the weeness at the same time? Sounds weird. Those are dashes. Me-ness and we-ness. But it's, can I be in oneness, right? Like, that's because really making love is that union, and that's frightening to people. That's also part of why we suppress it in the world, is because when you really surrender into that and you become one with your lover, you are losing yourself. So he's telling not just about sex, he's teaching everyone in a sense about how do you deal with horizontal oneness? How do you allow yourself to be more than you are, and also to retain your identity yourself, and the importance of that, the beauty of that, and that's true love.
It is a beautiful thing, because we have to be ourselves, right? You teach about the ego a lot, Sheila, and I know our listeners, some of them have heard it, some of them not, but without that desire for self-fulfillment, there is no unity.
Right. We wouldn't do anything. I can tell you this. If the W's and J, if those three did not have ego, evolved awesome ego, we wouldn't have this show. If the actors didn't have ego, we wouldn't have this show. Like, it wouldn't be written. A story wouldn't be told. You have to keep the meanness.
Right. It's just at the level of consciousness we go about having our meanness. Right. So the writers and the actors and the producers and the cameramen, everybody who is on there had the desire to be their highest expression of that character or that part.
Right.
In filming this show or writing this show.
And they see the value in who they are. So they are in this whole, and we're hearing that more and more about what an incredible experience it was. The fluidity, the union, the unity consciousness of everybody involved in the show and being impacted by that. But within that, every person has to, first of all, believe that the show is worth putting out there in the world, to sacrifice themselves and their individual desires in the moment, maybe sleep or something.
Yeah, these projects aren't easy to do.
Right. So there's a desire for the project, and then there's also themselves feeling like they're valuable, or they could just go home and sleep and somebody else could do it, know?
Yeah.
So that just so far goes beyond making love.
Yes, it does. Let's call it making life.
Yeah. But then let's go springboard off of that into the vibrational Sense8 orgy scene, where they are all doing that, right? And maybe this is a kind of turning point where they're experiencing their individual, they're representing that, what he just spoke about, as we have the individuals and they flash on individuals.
Well, my favorite part about this orgy scene isn't like 8 hot people having sex on the screen per se.
Right.
My favorite part is that they really blend in the idea. So we have this idea of privacy. Do we have any privacy? And we have like quick shots of part of the 8 having sex with one of the 8's partners.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing an experience, because not only are you open to having sex with somebody in your cluster per se, you're having sex with their partner too. And you're giving that expression of love to somebody even outside of your own cluster. Right.
And let's remember that in this one, none of the Sense8 are physically having sex with each other. That's all spiritual, vibrational, emotional sex happening.
Right. Just
creation energy, not attached to any philosophy about relationships or monogamy or anything like that. They're just experiencing.
For example, so it is Nomi and Neets, I believe, their
and
kissing at least. They could be having
they're
intercourse.
doing some,
and then Leto and Hernando.
Yeah.
But you see Nomi kiss Hernando, and she's a lesbian, right? So that just blows out this whole concept of gender and sexuality and boundaries, and when you're mixing not only outside to somebody else's partner, but outside of your own sexual comfort zone or what you're attracted to.
Right, which I think they're already showing us a little bit through the triad of Hernando and Daniela and Leto by showing us that it's a spectrum. You know, we don't have to even put ourselves in those categories. Like by nature, that this is sexual orientation is a spectrum. It's not a place.
Right.
But beyond that, we've got that's pure creation energy. It is springboarded or maybe triggered by Nomi and Leto, both with their own loving partners. And I mean, outside of the cluster, the relationships are so loving and healthy and evolved too, you know? So we've got that. I think Daniela even gets into the mix in this. She's watching in the real life, but then I think she's into that mix. We've got Wolfgang in the water again, which is again a conduit, the fluidity of creativity. And then, I love that it's experiencing it on many levels. And Kala gives herself over to that. And she hasn't physically been with anyone and maybe hasn't felt that attraction to it. But I think you mentioned
demisexuality or demisexual.
Demisexual is someone who's attracted just by the vibration, the emotion.
It's a deep emotional attachment. Yeah.
That would be the only thing that would stimulate them, and wouldn't matter what the physical sex of the person was. I think that's our natural state. To me, that would be what I would assume would be our natural state if society didn't teach us something different. Then, I think Ellen DeGeneres said that too when she first talked about Portia, like years and years ago. Or no, maybe it was Portia who said that, I think, about Ellen, that she would have loved her in any form, whatever her body looked like. She fell in love with her soul.
Yeah, I think that is definitely part of our expression of being human, that there are people who are just attracted to people or souls and not a body.
And I think when we look at the younger generation, I hear more people exploring. I mean, and thank you to the other generations who have opened up that possibility and spread our consciousness and shows like this, because more people are exploring that possibility. They may label themselves younger as one or the other or bi, but really what they're doing is saying, wait, maybe there's something more. They're exploring the spectrum of who they're attracted to. And the next layer of consciousness with that is to feel that soul connection first and that emotional connection first, and then express it to the physical. And that's what they're doing here in this scene. So to me, I know some people have been a little bit put off by all the sexual reflection in this. And somebody even said to me it was gratuitous sex. And I was like, what do you mean? Like everything in there has a purpose. Like it's so much more important than like Game of Thrones. Not that someone who said that would like Game of Thrones or whatever, but there's so many other shows where it's put in there just for ratings or whatever. This is put in here for purpose, to tell us a beautiful story.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, sexuality is definitely the huge spectrum of sexuality and orientations and things for sure. Like we don't, Leto, Hernando, and Daniela potentially could be expressing being polyamorous, where you can love more than one person at a time.
Yeah, and I think they, way back, they're in the scene where they wake up the next morning and she's like, ooh, did I overstep my boundary? And he's like, ooh, not that part of last night.
Right.
They make it clear that that's evolved. And even in this, she's watching them. They're not hiding from her. yeah, they're opening up to just not limited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So another powerful show.
Yes, it was. So that'll be a wrap. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for all your support on social media. If you want to contact us, please hit us up on the Twitter at live_sense8. You can also email us at team@livesense8.com. And if you've enjoyed the show and you listen, please pick up some exclusive perks over on patreon.com/livesense8 and support the show.
Thank you very much, everyone.